From r/fanfiction, what is something in fanfic that seems to annoy a lot of people, but doesn't annoy you personally? For me, it's out of character behavior. I find it funny. I can't imagine certain characters doing certain things, and that makes it funny to me. Even if the fic isn't good, as long as I get a laugh out of it, I don't mind. Credit to Reddit user Mental Career Zero for starting this thread. And let's go read some answers. Overused phrases. You go right on ahead and sigh all over the place, toe off your shoes, huff a laugh, and let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. I think it's pretty silly that describing a behavior in plain language could be considered overused or cliche at all. Incomplete fics. Don't get me wrong, I get why people avoid them, but I usually go in knowing that the fic will likely never be finished. Am I a bit disappointed? Sure, but I'd miss a lot of good writing and stories if I never read incomplete fics. Some of the best, most beautifully written fics I remember years later are incomplete. Probably because I didn't get an ending, but still. Plus, if the author ever decides to come back, I know it'll be worth it. Deviating from canon. A lot of people seem to lose their minds when certain events go differently or even don't happen at all because the author feels like it. Like, if I wanted a canon retelling, I'd just open the source material, not gonna lie. Sometimes deviation from canon is even better considering some medias have bad endings or continuations. I even tend to prefer deviations in AUs than canon-compliant works. Not something in fanfiction, but the actual genres themselves. High school AUs, modern AUs, and alternate universe no powers. It's something about reading my favorite characters in a setting that's not their own or in any relation to the plot of their canon story. I love to break away from canon and relax my brain from all of that, so to me it's a huge breath of fresh air to unwind and settle for something completely different, while still keeping character more or less. Spelling and grammar mistakes. If you can still understand what the author meant, it's fine by me. Plus, sometimes they're funny. I honestly love reading younger people's writing in general. I'm not too bothered by grammar and spelling mistakes, and I enjoy the crazy, unbelievable antics and wish fulfillment, especially for reader inserts. Getting kidnapped by characters, going to high school with characters, etc. I write every day, and sometimes I lose the fun of it, especially because my writing is more serious. Reading a goofy, nonsensical story is a breath of fresh air and stops me from seeing my writing as a chore or free labor. It's fun. It's love. Straight up ignoring canon for the sake of having a good time. It's a bit hard to explain when I'm okay with this and when I'm not, but in general, if I can tell the author was having a lot of fun writing, I can forgive just about anything they do if the premise interests me at all. Long, rambling notes. That's what I miss more about the fanfiction.net days, to be honest. There was this author who went on lengths explaining her thinking process when writing, and sometimes her notes were just a bit shorter than the chapters. Most people just don't care about the person behind the story and what their opinions on the characters are, and while that's understandable, I freaking love it. It probably stems from the fact that interacting with other writers who share similar opinions as yours is my favorite kind of fandom interaction, so learning what goes on in their mind as they write is always interesting to me. Long author notes where they chat with the characters. Also, I'm pretty okay with the dreaded orbs. It's not the worst description out there. The long author notes chatting with the characters is so nostalgic for me since I discovered fanfiction on Quotev during 2013 when a huge number of quizzes and fanfictions had that style of notes. Miscommunication. Love it. Yeah, this is one where I feel like the community has a bad case of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Sure, there's completely implausible miscommunication where it's drawn out for 100 pages when it could be solved with a single conversation, but 1, a lot of miscommunications aren't that simple, and B, even if it is that simple, depending on the character, there can be a ton of valid in-character reasons for why they're not communicating. Also, miscommunication as comedy is gold. Pet names like babe, baby, honey, or in-universe variants of pet names as well. I see so many comments from people who don't like them, but hardly ever see comments from people who do like them. I was surprised that pet names were so wildly disliked. Canon/specialized knowledge inconsistencies. Example, in the Star Wars fandom, a lot of fans will get hung up over an author getting some info wrong. I couldn't care less. Same with real-life knowledge and realism. Oh gee, that medical procedure you just described is total bullcrap? Didn't notice and don't care. If I wanted to read an actual description of a procedure, I'd find a medical journal. Silly tags. Sure, a wall of them is annoying, but other than that, I do like those little silly tags people leave. More often than not, they're hilarious. Second person. Sometimes whole fandoms are built around it, and you either take it as it is or don't read. I'd rather read, so second person is okay to me. Purple prose. I'm a screenwriter, so a lot of my writing, even in prose, tends to be quite blunt and to the point. I wish I could write as beautifully as well-written purple prose. Pregnancy fics are my favorite. I will say a lot of them are poorly written, but when they're written well, gosh darn are they good. Pregnancy or babies as happily ever after in ship fics. Me too! I don't even want kids in real life, but I'm a sucker for it in fic. Self-inserts and reader inserts. I'm a fan of self-inserts because of how the authors portray either themselves or a version of themselves. But above all, when a character aware of the world and events from a perspective of fictional media is thrown into the mix and meant to float based on what they know, it never gets boring. Each one has the same sort of premise, but because everyone is different, something new always happens. I freaking love them. Even the ones that are still a bit overpowered still entertain. You know what? This is the first description of self or reader inserts that have ever made me understand why it's enjoyed. Kudos to you for that. I don't think love triangles are inherently bad, honestly. I think it's just they're so prolific, especially after Twilight and the Hunger Games and so on, that we've seen a lot of badly written ones. But as its own concept, I don't mind them. All small letters. I read a lot of fics with small letters, both good and bad. While it's not proper, I do find it cute, especially when a fic is a cute fluff one and small letters do match that cute casual tone so well. The word smirk. I simply refuse to describe an irritatingly smug smile when I could just say smirk. Epithets. Even if it's stuff like bluette, I won't click off. I do find the outrageous ones funny, but I feel like in moderate amounts they're totally acceptable anyway. Random side pairings. I honestly don't care if a random pairing has a little side story. A lot of the time it's something I wouldn't seek out anyway, so it's a nice change of pace. First or second person. There are awesome published books in first person. Ruby Dixon's Ice Planet Barbarians and lots of light novels spring to mind, and I've seen good examples of second POV too. If I remember correctly, one of my favorite Persona 5 fics uses second POV. A lot of Mystic Messenger fics do too. I don't visually like Y/N, but I eventually gloss over it if the story is otherwise good. Untagged triggering content. I basically only have one scenario that makes me click out if it's sprung on me. The rest? I'll keep a chug-a-luggin'. Although it's more common for warnings to happen in published books now, none of the stuff I grew up reading had them, so it's fun to have surprises. I take my stuff religiously though, y'all won't catch me slippin'. The lack of romance. I welcome that good stuff with the widest of open arms. Mentioning physical description, especially eye color a lot. Bonus points if there's outfit descriptions. I love having the visual reminders of it as I'm reading. Overuse of epithets. In the same vein as I like being reminded of the physical description, I also like emphasis on characteristics and the relationships between characters. Super AU to the point of hardly anything matching canon. And purple prose. Lots of times I don't mind being taken out of the story or a beautiful description messing up the pacing because I reread sentences and paragraphs as I go all the time anyway. Short fics. The right author can work miracles with just a few words. Less than 1,000 words? It's probably going to the top of my to-read list. Then I get to feel like I'm actually accomplishing something when I read a fic. No spaced paragraphs. If the writing is good enough, I can parse through it for the story. It really doesn't bother me that much. I love first-person narrative. I love seeing how people portray characters' thoughts, and I love going into their silly little brains. Too bad I almost never see any first-person narrative since so many people dislike it. Mary Sue behavior sometimes. Sometimes it does annoy me, but sometimes when I turn to fanfic, I'm looking to see my comfort character be totally perfect without reproach, even to cringy lengths. Basically only acceptable to me with my comfort character though. Welp. Character death. Bring the drama! They never ever seem to get lots of love, but people who are like Tolkien-like writers with their own niche lore who take 6 chapters to even get to the characters they tagged. I've read some fics with like 10 to 20 kudos, 60,000 plus words, with the most niche lore that reveals A, this author has an obsession or a job in what they're writing, and B, you just know they left out another 60,000 words of lore containing in-depth knowledge of this. Cheating/netorare. It's a guilty pleasure trope of mine. I live for the emotional damage. I actually don't mind out-of-character behavior if it benefits the fic itself. Everyone can have their own version of the character, and as long as that stays consistent within the fic and doesn't completely stray away from the original character, I don't mind it. I also don't mind reading fics that contain ships I personally don't agree with. I think it's okay if an author has their own ship, and if it's written well, I'll still read it even if I don't ship those characters. If authors ship questionable, non-canon, or pseudo-incest ships, for example, Batman's kids, a lot of people will flip out. Look, the author wanted to write it. You don't have to read it. You have no right to tell the author that they cannot write that. Tropes, cliches, and cheesiness never bother me. I love them. Give me all the tropes, especially romantic ones, please. In progress stories. Honestly, it kind of confuses me and breaks my heart a little when people say they don't want to read a story that's not finished. Because if everybody does that, then the stories don't get written. What could have been the next hit of the fandom might lose steam early because it feels like no one wants their story, so why post? A story with no readers is shouting into the void, and not everyone can soldier on with no engagement. Not to mention, I feel like something that is very unique about fanfiction versus picking up a book is that your reviews do in fact influence the story most of the time. I am always absolutely delighted when I am writing a story and I get a fun idea from a review, or I'll realize there's something I need to tighten or correct because I see my reviewers are all tripping up on the same thing. Sometimes I see people are picking up on what I'm putting down, and that tells me I need to stay the path that I'm on. And it's just plain old encouraging. It's nice to see what people have to say with good or constructive critique, and that they're thinking about my writing. Also, sometimes outright unfinished stories are so incredible that they are very much worth reading, even without every loose end getting tied up. I needed this thread today. I've been reading all of the I won't read if threads, and it lists all the stuff that makes my romances a romance, and I was wondering if I was doing something wrong. So, phew! Glad to see my overused phrases, epithets, slow burn, and orbs are a-okay with some of you. Big thank you to my Patreon members, my Little Ruse, Seltzer Fountain Man, Kuski55, Logan, Fallen Vexen, and Sam. Check out the link to my Patreon in the description so you can see what benefits I provide to my Patreon members. And also thank you to my YouTube channel members, my Mini Ruse, AD, and Taylor Thompson. You rock. And also thank you to everyone else who watched. I wouldn't be doing this stuff without you, so I really appreciate you being here, and I hope you had a good time. Let me know in the comments, what are some commonly hated things in fan fiction or just fiction that you actually don't mind or enjoy a lot? And I'll see you in the next video.